Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today on generating production-ready React code in minutes with App Builder. I'm going to give everyone just a few more minutes to join before we get started. All right, it looks like most people are starting to pile in now. So for everybody on the call who doesn't know me, my name is JJ McWigan. I'm the product manager of App Builder here at Infragistics, and if you're on the call a few weeks ago, it'll be very similar today. I'll run through a few slides to discuss how App Builder can help accelerate your React development. And then we'll also see how organizations are using low-code to eliminate tedious, error-prone hand coding that they face today. And then after that, I'll pass it off to Jason. We'll run through a quick demo, and then we'll hang around at the end to answer any questions that you guys do have. That'll be today's agenda. Like I said, we'll do a quick intro. We'll talk about accelerating time to market, eliminating error-prone hand coding, simplifying app development, and then Jason will do that demo for us. So, as I'm sure many people on the call are aware, React is growing in popularity to go along with the other web frameworks like Angular and Blazor. And knowing this, our team recently added React code gen capabilities in App Builder to go along with these other popular web frameworks. With this addition, we're now simplifying the process of creating your React apps and allowing you to quickly build and deploy high-quality apps with these. So let's just do a quick intro on App Builder for React. As we discussed on our session a few weeks ago, App Builder is the only low-code tool capable of delivering production-ready, enterprise-grade React code, allowing teams to build real apps real fast. Using our WYSIWYG drag-and-drop interface platform, this gives you complete control from product, design, and development teams to help you deliver pixel-perfect apps up to 80% faster. This feature allows you to seamlessly transition from an idea to a completed design and then generate reusable React code, taking you down from months or weeks down to days or minutes to actually complete these apps. And then, of course, the differentiator here is that this is reusable, production-ready code, unlike many tools that produce hard-to-maintain spaghetti code. So now let's take a look at some of the key benefits that App Builder for React actually does provide. The big one here, of course, is accelerating time to market. So why should you actually build your next app with App Builder? And it's ultimately about being the first to market and maintaining that competitive edge. So with App Builder, you can leverage the full potential of React's component-based architecture and ensure your apps are efficient, maintainable, and easily scalable. So how does App Builder actually help you accomplish this? So we simplify the entire design to code story, eliminating the designer-developer handoffs, time-consuming POCs, and enabling rapid iteration and refinement of designs and features. This will, in turn, save you time and resources, so your teams don't have to write any code from scratch. Plus, the code that is generated for one framework can be repurposed in just a single click, since everything that you produce in App Builder is framework agnostic. You can utilize our pre-built templates and reusable components. So App Builder comes with a variety of pre-built templates, sample applications, and reusable components to easily kickstart your development. And then these resources can be quickly adapted to meet your team's specific needs, which will save you time throughout the entire development process. And then lastly, the ability to import Sketch or Figma files directly into App Builder, and then again, customize it to meet your team's needs. The next differentiator here is eliminating error-prone hand coding. So another major benefit of the React code gen is the process of automatically creating this boilerplate code for your React projects, so you don't have to spend time manually writing these lines of code. We automate the creation of the repetitive code so that you can focus on implementing unique features and running any custom code that you need for your projects. With this capability, everything that you create in App Builder can be generated into code that is editable, reusable, and production ready. So this allows for easy modifications to allow your teams to meet your project deadlines and project requirements. Once compiled into JavaScript or HTML, the code then runs seamlessly across all web browsers. With App Builder for React, you're achieving seamless functionality with significantly fewer lines of React code. So this is eliminating that error-prone hand coding that we're talking about, reducing your workload, and then delivering feature-rich apps faster than ever. And then finally, what I want to talk about here is just simplifying the app development process overall. So even if you or your team don't have enough resources, whether it's not enough time, not enough skilled developers, not enough developers on the team, with the code gen capability for React, you're going to maximize your productivity and allow you to deliver high-quality apps within those strict timeframes. While not only that, but you're also minimizing the manual coding errors. So that's going to foster consistency across all your projects. You're making fewer iterations by reducing the amount of errors earlier in the process. You can leverage the visual interface and pre-built components, and then optimize these repetitive tasks like screen design, UX flows, theming and branding, data binding, deployment, and then once completed, in just a few clicks, you can upload your completed project to GitHub with that integration that we offer. And finally, we're empowered developers of any skill level. So whether you're a citizen developer or highly experienced, you can use App Builder to create a stunning React app utilizing this pre-built toolbox of 65 UI components, which include our fastest grids and charts. And then what we always like to say with App Builder, our goal is to help you code less and create more. So overall, with App Builder, we're now simplifying the entire process from design to code and taking you down from maybe months or weeks to build your projects, getting you down to days or minutes to help you achieve your goals faster. So that's really what I want to run through here on these slides. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jason, who will run through a quick demo for us. He's going to show us how easy it is to actually build and deploy React apps with App Builder. And then after that, we will pop up a quick poll. But Jason, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you now.
Thanks, JJ. First, I want to highlight that we'll be using a web API today via REST to access data through App Builder. The way App Builder accesses data is through web API. So, for example, this is an Azure API app written in .NET Core, and this happens to be the Swagger file for it. In this case, it's running at Northwind Cloud, Azure Websites, and this is a modified version of the Northwind database. So it has employees, orders, and things like that that would be useful in a typical master detail app, which is what we're going to build today in App Builder. So as JJ said, appbuilder.dev is the place to go to find out everything about the value of App Builder and how it can help your organization drive productivity, less bugs, and overall developer satisfaction when building applications. So from here, I am going to see App Builder in action, or I could sign in. When you see App Builder in action, you jump into basically a test experience where you don't have to log in right away. You can still experience the application, and then eventually when you try to view code or publish something, it says, hey, why don't you log in to start your trial? I've already started my trial, so I'm going to click sign in, and I end up in the entry point for App Builder. The left-hand side, I have my projects. I have a few workspaces that I've been working on, but essentially this is what you're going to see when you log in for the first time or you create a workspace. We have a bunch of different sample applications that you can start with. These are great ways to learn the product, but also to exercise, for example, the code generation. So open up any one of these samples, generate React code or Angular code or Blazor code or web component code, and see for yourself that it is high quality production ready code. What we're going to do today is we're going to build a new app with one of the templates. I'm going to use an empty template, but you can see there's a bunch of different options here for basically every web layout that you might want to use. You can also import your sketch files or use our Figma plugin to take your designs and go directly into applications with designs that were built using our design system. So let's just go to templates. I'm going to start with the blank template, and I am in App Builder. App Builder is like every other, WYSIWYG application on the market today. You have your list of pages or views. Here I have a document outline. I have my canvas. I have a property editor on the right. Based on what I'm selecting, you'll see different items here on the left-hand side, like your data sources, your themes, your assets, etc. What we're going to do first is pick a layout for this application. So we have a bunch of preset layouts here that you can use, or you can start with your own layout. What I'm going to do is select a side pane plus split content layout, which is going to work well for my application. We're going to list our employees here. And then when we select an employee, we want to update a data grid and a data charts based on the selected employee ID. So a typical master detail app with the ultimate goal of generating pixel-perfect, production-ready React code. So let's go ahead and start by looking at our data sources. So I have a bunch of data sources here. The data source we're going to use is called Northwind Cloud. Northwind Cloud is my endpoint that I showed you in the browser, my azurewebsites.net, and I have a handful of APIs already selected. So I have my customers. If I click send here, we can view the details and we can see what we have in terms of the results coming back. You can see some of these are parameterized, which is what we're going to use. We're going to pass parameters from our list to the grid and the chart to display the employee's correct information. So let's go ahead and close this out. I am going to add a list component to my layout. So let's just type in list and it shows up in our toolbox. I can drag it over and here I have my list component. The right-hand side now has changed, as has the document outline based on what I've just added to my view. So you can see I've got a column layout, inside the column layout, my list, and then my list item. So I'm going to make this data bound. What I want to do is select my data source. So I want to find my Northwind Cloud data source in the list. And what I want to display here is my employees list. So this is a REST API. I'll select it. We haven't retrieved any data yet because we haven't run the application, but now I can configure this list with what I want to bind to the component. So the first thing I want to do is bind to the title. So now I have the schema of my employees, and let's go ahead and display the full name of the employee. For the subtitle, let's display their title. So let's drill in. I'm going to select title. We have an avatar and we have actions. So for example, if I want to bind something to this avatar, I can select it. I'm going to say I want to display an image, and let's go ahead and bind to the employee photo path, which is a URL to the picture of the employee that's in my data set. I want to make this large. We can make it rounded or square, but see, my images already have like a circle with a color background, so it doesn't really matter in this case if it's round or square because it's always going to look round with that background. And then as far as my my action, we have a bunch of built-in icons that you can add. In my case, I'm really not going to use the action, so I'm going to go back to my list and I'm going to turn off the action. So now when I run this guy, what you'll see is the list of my employees from the data source, and then you'll see the React code that makes up this list component. So you'll see here that we have our master view class. I'm pulling in this list, which we're generating in another service class, which we don't show here, but I've got my IGR list component, which is all data bound. It shows my photo path, my employee full name, employee title, and then the remainder of my page, which we really haven't done anything yet with these two divs. But let's say you're looking at Angular. So let's just go and look at Angular modules. Here we go. The same code. That's the HTML in Angular. This is the TypeScript. This is the SCSS. So it doesn't really matter what you design. We are going to generate the code for anything. This is what's called the common application model, what we're designing to here. And then we use a code generation service and we generate that production ready code from this model. So let's click edit. And what I want to do now is I want to add a grid and then I want to add a chart. So I can go over to my toolbox and I can type in grid again and do a drag and drop. But there's also a shortcut. I'm going to hit Control E or Command E on the Mac. I'm going to type in grid and I can quickly add a grid component here. And let's do the same with chart. Let's do Control E. I am going to use a category chart, which both of these have bound to some default data, some sample data, but I'm going to modify all of that based on the data coming in from my list item of my employee. So in order to correctly set up these components to work with my API, I'm going to bind these to a parameterized endpoint. So what I need is the parameter, which is going to be the employee ID. So on my interactions, what I want to do is select the set variable interaction. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. What do I want to do here? I want to create a new variable, and I'm just going to call this guy selected employee. And this is an integer. It's a number, basically. That's the employee ID 1, 2, or 3. And we can click create. So what just happened is a variable was created, but it's not bound to anything. So we have to tell it what value to use. Well, the value that I want to use is the employee ID. So now every time I select this, the employee ID will update. If we go over to our left-hand menu here, you'll see there's a variables tag. I have the employee ID. One of the things you can do on the variable editor is you can also set a default value. So in this case, I'll set a default value to the number 1. And because I know Nancy DeValio is number 1, and her data will automatically come up, but it'll always get reset every time I select an item from the list. I'm just going to hit save. You'll notice there's some other types of variables here. I can create a new variable just by clicking new variable. I can create a global variable as well. And we also have the concept of route parameters. So if I want to pass the content or the context of a data item from one page to another, I can do that with a route parameter. So I'm going to just click cancel here. Don't need that anymore. So what are we going to bind to our grid? So in the grid, we want to use our orders by employee API. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go down to my Northwind Cloud endpoint, and let's find our employee, orders by employee, and the parameter here is employee ID. So let's go ahead and select that. You'll notice that all of a sudden there's nothing in this list because it's expecting to be bound to, or it needs a bound parameter, or any parameter actually, to make sure that whatever I'm binding to brings back some data from the API. So let's click done. Now I have my orders here in my grid. If I go ahead and run this, what's going to happen? You guessed it. As I select the item in the left, you can see that my details are showing up in this grid, and you can see that the code that's getting generated is getting a little bit richer because we've added more code here. Since this is a data grid with all kinds of capabilities and features, let's say, for example, I want to hide a few of these columns. I can go over to the outline and I can just click the hide button. When I select individual columns, I have options like changing the header, pinning it to the left, hiding it, of course, doing a display, a cell display, custom template, or an edit template, or a header template. So there's all kinds of neat capability that you can do with these grids. I'm going to select customer ID, and I'm going to pin customer ID to the left. And I also want to just change the header just so you can see what that looks like. We'll change this to customer ID. Looks a little nicer, so you can see how that's affected here in the grid. And then, of course, this is a grid. Grids are meant to do fun things. So let's go ahead and add some features like the grid toolbar. Let's make sure that we support exporting. Let's enable some row actions, grouping, hiding, moving, pinning, resizing, just a bunch of different grid features. And you can see they all show up here on the grid toolbar. If I want to enable or disable any of these options, I can do that as well. Or I can just change the header to something like React Demo. So now when I run this guy, what we'll see is my customer ID is pinned to the left. I have my export options, and I have options for hiding columns and pinning columns to the left. So finally, let's go ahead and update the chart. So the chart is going to need, again, another endpoint to bind its data. So let's go to its data property. Let's go back to Northwind Cloud, and in Northwind Cloud, let's type in employee again. Whoops. And I want to use the employee orders endpoint, which does take in, again, the employee ID, which we're pulling in from the selected item on our list. So let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to bind this guy to my selected employee. I'm going to click done. So what this did is it looked at all the fields that were in that endpoint, and it just tried to bind those to the chart. So what we want to do is we want to edit those data fields and kind of change what gets displayed here. So what I want to do is I want to show the customer ID. So let's find the customer ID here. And on the y-axis, I want to show the number of orders by each customer. So let's go ahead and do order ID. So I just want order ID. What this is doing is this increasing a line. It's actually trying to sum all of those fields. So let's go back. I want to change the aggregate from a sum to a count of rows. Okay, so now it's starting to look better. 1, 2, those are the customers. However, I want to tweak this a little bit, and I'm going to say orders by customer by this salesperson, just so we know what it means. We can add a title on the vertical axis. We can change the interval. So I want to change the interval of my chart to 1, so that will make more sense. And then I want the range minimum here not to be 1. I want it to be 0. So I always want my y-axis to start at 0. So I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks good to me. And it doesn't look good with this type of chart. So let's go ahead and change the chart type to a line chart. I'm sorry, I don't want a line chart. I want a column chart. So now that actually looks pretty cool. So those are going to be the orders by customer by this particular salesperson. So now when we run this, as I select different salespeople, you'll see those values are changing in my chart. And I haven't written any code as of yet. So let's see what happens next. So I'm going to go back to edit. Let's give my project a name. We're going to call this webinar demo 01. And what's the next step? Well, I want to publish this to GitHub. I want to get the code. I want to start working with this in Visual Studio Code. So let's call this demo webinar 01. And I'm going to make it public. That's fine. We'll create this repository. And I'm going to go ahead and click publish. So what this is doing is it's taking everything that we've just done, throwing it up to our code generation service in the cloud, and then generating the application in GitHub. So now when I look at this guy, what you're going to see is the entire application that we just did our WYSIWYG drag and drop is all picture perfect production ready code here in GitHub. So what are we going to do next? Let's go ahead, go to code, grab our URL to clone this guy. I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Let's do a Command-Shift-P. I'm going to git clone. I'm going to pick this guy, and let's just say, yes, we will clone you, and let's open you up. And now here is that application inside of VS Code. So if I go to my master view again, here's my master view. This is all of the code that we've written. I got some red squigglies because we need to do our npm install. So let's go ahead, npm install. And I'll get rid of these terminals here and this terminal here. And what this is doing is it's going to install all the dependencies required for Ignite UI. It's taking all of that code that we generated from the application, and it is simply going to give us that app right here. So what's the beauty of this? I didn't write any code. I'm not great at CSS. I'm going to get a perfectly responsive application that has all of my data bound to it, has my services, and I can now go and continue to work on this. Now, not only do we have this app, which is exactly what we expected, my master detail app, I have all of my pixel perfect code or my pixel perfect design, everything that we saw inside of App Builder is now just an actual running application. I have all of my source code for, all my CSS, all the stuff that basically I don't have to worry about. This is all WYSIWYG, drag and drop, and I'm done. What can I do next? Well, the logical question is, what happens if I change something again in App Builder? What's going to happen? So let's go back to App Builder and let's do something like change the theme, something very obvious. So let's change this to a dark theme. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to republish this. So let's go ahead. And what this is going to do is create a pull request on the server. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this guy to the server. And now we follow whatever the normal pull request process would happen to be. So let's go and click Webinar Demo 1. Here's my pull request. I'm just going to merge it. Let's confirm the merge. I don't need to delete my branch, but I'll go back to Visual Studio Code and I'll just do a resync here on my code. So this is going to grab whatever updates happen to be coming in. You can see I've got this theme change. So let's go make sure that everything is saved. That's great. Let's go back to our application. And just like that, I didn't even have to hit refresh. Visual Studio Code took care of that for me. I have my application all nice and ready to go with all of my features. So for example, let's do a group by customer ID. So now I have a group by customer ID. That's probably not a good one to group by. Let's scroll down to the right. Something like country would be a good one to group by. So we have a bunch of different groups of customers by country. You can see I have my fixed column. What happens if I export this guy to Excel? Let's open up our Excel file. There is my beautifully grouped Excel file. So we actually do group the Excel files on the export as well. So it's not just a flat CSV. So it's actually really slick. I'm going to minimize this guy, but you have all of the capabilities of the grid, the chart, the list, master detail, interactive. Now what would you do? Maybe wire up some CRUD. You could start with one of the sample apps. You'd add more screens. But we have a lot of videos on YouTube that demonstrate all of the other features of what you can do with App Builder. But we're going to keep doing webinars like this to take you through more of that app building process. So with that, I'll pass it back to JJ to wrap this up.
All right. Thanks for that, Jason. So that does pretty much wrap up our time here today. I am going to go ahead and pop up a poll, though, with a few questions. So if you guys can spare just a few seconds to run through and answer those for us, it really does help us with any future releases, getting that feedback from you guys. And then, of course, if you do have any questions, you could contact us for a personalized demo. And you could also try App Builder at the URL here, appbuilder.dev. And then any questions that you guys do have, you can send over to me. This is my contact information. And then you could also reach out to Jason directly. His email is jasonb@improgistics.com. But we do appreciate everybody coming to the webinar today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.